Hello everybody and welcome back to Encounters USA. I'm sitting here with Todd Neiss, and Todd is a member of the Primate Conservancy. Primate Conservancy. I've been doing these interviews for all day, so I'm kind of getting a little bit slow. So Todd is also a member, partially works with the Olympic Project, and we just talked to Derek. So Todd is loosely associated with them, and Todd is associated with, of course, the American Primate Conservancy. And so Todd, you guys are, Todd just got finished speaking at this Sasquatch summit, so I know he's a little bit tired, and so we don't want to have him basically regurgitate what he's already talked about, but Todd has had a couple of amazing encounters. He's a retired military person, and one of his encounters was fascinating. It happened down in Oregon, and it happened when they were setting off demolitions. So just the fact that they had an encounter under those circumstances is just really fascinating. So Todd, could you tell us a little bit about what happened and how that encounter took place?
Well, first off, let me just say that I have always, even having grown up in the Pacific Northwest, I've always been somewhat agnostic, if you will, when it came to the subject of Bigfoot. I really didn't care either way. You can't help but hear about it when you live here, but it's something that I never really took a great interest in. I didn't read books on the subject. I didn't watch TV programs on the subject. I just kind of went about my life as normal, and I had all that change for me on April 3rd, 1993, when I was working with the National Guard. I was a combat engineer, and on that particular day, our training involved heavy demolition. We only did this once a year in this quantity, and to do so, we had to go onto some private timberland that they would allow us to go out onto for safety purposes. We would utilize these different rock quarries, gravel pits, if you will, that were based around this private timber holding, and this is where we would practice our trade. We had 3 sites that day that we were working on. The first one was cutting charges using plastic explosives, cutting steel I-beam. The second was a mock minefield where we would practice blowing a lane for passage, mobility purposes, which was also C4. And our final third quarry that we went to was a cratering charge, where we had about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel for hours.
And what fun!
Oh
wow!
Yeah, it's different. So kind of ruins the 4th of July for you. But anyway, we had just lit the fuses on this third cratering charge. Got in our vehicles. There were 4 vehicles in total. 2 Humvees up front, of which I was a passenger in the second one. We had a 1.5 or 2.5 ton troop transport behind our Humvee, and then in the rear, of course, the commander's vehicle, Humvee. And as we've lit the fuses, and as we're convoying down to a safety area, we had 11 minutes to get there to wait for the report of the explosion and then go back and check our work. Just standard SOP. But what wasn't standard was what happened next, because it was being a fairly decent day in April on the coast. I had my window unzipped and arm hanging out, and I'm looking around the countryside for deer and elk because I hunted that area quite extensively. I'm just looking for wildlife. What I got was something altogether different. Wild, to be sure. As we came around this corner, the brush cleared away, and I was able to have a direct line of sight of the second blast site across this ravine. And what I saw next was 3 figures, dark figures, standing right out in the open in this second quarry. Now this is basalt rock for the gravel, and so it's a light gray, but these figures were jet black, no clothing, which you would have been able to see. They were huge, and they were built like bodybuilders. I'm talking extremely wide shoulders, barreled chest, tapered waist. What really got me though was the arms. The arms went way below their knees in all three cases. Now the one in the middle was the tallest, and it was, I would estimate, 8 to 9 feet high. The other two came up to its shoulders, the two on either side that were flanking it, but they were by no means short, mind you, but just huge jet black figures. And what jumped out at me, other than that fact, was that while the one in the middle stood there, the tallest of them, the two that flanked that larger animal were shifting weight from foot to foot, rocking side to side, and in the process, these long arms swinging well below their knees. And they did this the entire 25 seconds I saw them. And 25 seconds doesn't sound like a lot of time, but I would encourage your viewers to watch your watch for 25 seconds. You'll get bored real quick. But 25 seconds is, in terms of Bigfoot sightings, is quite a long sight of them. And this behavior that they were doing, they did the entire time. They were obviously watching us as we descended this hill across the ravine. And people ask me, did you say anything? Why didn't you stop? Did you have a camera? You know, were you armed? And the fact of the matter is, this was kind of pre-cell phone camera days, and my thing was, other than the fact we had a very large bomb ticking out behind us, was we didn't have a radio in our Jeep, so I couldn't call for a halt, nor would I under the circumstances. It wouldn't be safe. But 25 seconds elapsed, and we round that corner, and the brush comes up, and I lose sight of them, and I tell you, I just slumped back in my seat and tried to make sense of it. This was something I didn't expect. This was my hunting area. I'd never seen or heard of or expected anything like this to be out there. And so we continued on to the staging area, and while standing there, I kind of walked back up the roadways hoping to get another view of it, and I could not leave the side of the group, just protocol, but I'm standing there on my tiptoes trying to look over this ravine, and I just couldn't quite see the quarry from where I was at. But while I'm standing there, somebody yells out my name. I hear somebody go, "Hey, Neiss." And I turn and look, and Sergeant Martin, Jeff Martin, is walking up my way, and he goes, "What are you looking at?" Well, I said, "I don't know. I had nothing." And he continued walking up to me, smoking on his cigarette, and gets up close, and he goes, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw at that second blast site." Well, holding my breath, I said, "I don't know, Jeff, what did you see?" I wasn't going to say it. But he went on to say, after taking a drag off the cigarette and making sure nobody else was in earshot, he said, "I saw 3 huge jet black." He paused a second and said, "Bigfoot." And of course, at that point, I'm like, "Dude, I saw him too. I saw him too." You know, and it's not that I needed the corroboration. I certainly can't unsee what I saw that day. I can see it as clearly today as it was yesterday. But that's kind of how it all happened for me. That's how my research began on April 3rd, 1993, and I've been researching ever since. I would follow up, though, by saying that being National Guard and training, every month, 1 week in a month, that in the next month's drill, during the next month's drill, we had 2 more soldiers, independent of each other, come forward and admit to seeing the same thing. So this makes this sighting extremely unique, not just the nature of what we were doing out there, blowing up the forest, if you will, but multiple animal sightings are very rare, and multiple eyewitness sightings of multiple animals are even rarer yet. So it's just, it's been something that's changed my life in every way I can think of.
Well, Todd, you said a couple things that I'd like to go back and talk a little bit about, just about this encounter. And the first one is, so you'd set off one explosion, and you guys remained in the area for the first one?
We'd set off two, actually.
But are you setting it off and then you're leaving and coming back?
Exactly.
Okay. So you set off one and then you left and came back. You set up for the next one, and then you're leaving. So the first one probably drew a loop. Okay.
Quite possible.
But you've been elk hunting there, you say, and you've never seen anything that comes close to this?
Nothing.
Okay.
Oh, no.
All right. So when we're looking at the behavioral aspects, it sounds like, well, you're curious, and could you tell that they were male or female?
I wasn't close enough to make out gender or really facial features for that much.
But they were three adults, probably.
Oh yes, definitely.
Okay. So most likely you probably have three males coming to basically check out what's going on. And so you guys did your second explosion. Did you go back up for the third one after seeing these?
Well, interesting you should mention that, because on the second one, this is where we had training lines, anti-tank lines laid out, and we would run a couple ring lanes and branch off and do our lane. For whatever reason, we didn't go directly. I think for time, we were running out of time with the daylight. We didn't go directly back to the second one, but rather went on to the third one. And after that explosion, because the road looped around, we went back to the third one, and then looked back around to the second one after that. But what really is amazing is these things had come out in the open within less than an hour from the time we detonated that explosion. So, that just speaks to me of intelligence, to have that powerful of a inquisitiveness to be able to overcome, several 100-pound explosion and mushroom cloud and to still come back into the scene and investigate just baffles me.
Yeah, and you also don't know where they came from. They could have come from maybe the next mountain range. Because it had taken in an hour. They can move pretty far in that amount of time. So, if they would have been in the neighborhood, you probably would have seen them a lot sooner. That's all conjecture.
I should mention something. I don't always point this out, but this was something in hindsight, was that as we were laying our ring mains, as we call them, my squad had one, we had another squad setting another. We practice, I'm sure you know, noise discipline, light discipline, as if we're actually, enemies in the area. And so you've got to be able to do whatever you do in absolute silence. And we're all working on putting our charges next to these anti-tank lines when suddenly I heard this very loud whooping sound. I would imitate it if we weren't in company, but it was just a whoop. And I immediately snapped to, getting ready to jump down the throat of one of my troops, because I thought, what the hell are you doing? And I look up, and everybody's still down on their knees, planning these charges, and I just let it go. But again, in hindsight, it makes me wonder if they weren't actually observing us placing those charges together.
Yeah, that's really amazing, and you have a lot of indications of behavior. So let's just, I'm going to have Todd on for the podcast, so we'll have a lot of time to discuss this encounter and other ones that he'd like to discuss, but let's talk a little bit about the stuff that you guys are doing now, just a little bit. And now I want to say it right. It's the American Primate Conservancy.
Thank you. Yes.
It takes me a while.
The key word is conservancy, because our ultimate goal is conservation and protection of these animals. A lot of people argue, hey, they don't need protection, they're doing fine, we see them all the time. I beg to differ, because unless you can tell me how many there are today, how many there were 1,000 years ago, what their habitat is, what their resources are, what are their lifespan? What is their range? You know, all these factors need to be discovered before you can literally tell the health of a species. And my concern, as infrequently as they're seen, is that, yeah, some of it might be partly because they're obviously very shy and reclusive, and for good reason. But part of it may be due to declining numbers. And so that's what the Conservancy is trying to find out. We have 5 tenets to the Conservancy, and that's the discovery, the research, knowledge, and this is critical, recognition and protection, because without official recognition, they will never be protected. And so it's been tried before to get government entities, Fish and Wildlife, the Interior Department to recognize these creatures with no avail. And so the Conservancy is going about it a little different way, and I mentioned it a little bit in the conference there. But we think the best route to go is to deal with Native American tribes. This has been part of their heritage, part of their culture for thousands of years, long before Europeans came here. And there's no doubt that they believe these things exist. They know they do. And so, being that reservations have their own sets of laws and regulations, what we want to do, and we're working with 3 tribes currently, is to help them formulate policy, at least in terms of their reservation, that the harassment, injury, killing of these creatures is illegal by law, by their laws, and punishable by jail, fine, whatever. If we can do that, I think it's going to spread like wildfire to other tribes, because it lends credence to their heritage and their culture that most, let's face it, most Europeans brush off as mystical, you know. So if we can get that to catch on throughout North America, it's going to give us a good basis then to go forward from there and say, look, we have an indigenous people who are all on the same sheet of music. Now let's get serious about this. And then we can go, you know, bring up the Endangered Species Act and try to bring some of the mainstream science into this question.
Is there hesitation on the part of the tribes?
Not so far. Not so far. I'm working with the Omaha tribe in Nebraska, Inuit tribe in Alaska, and Warm Springs, Confederated Warm Springs tribe in Oregon. I'd love to work with the Quinault tribe here. But like I say, once we get a few on board, I think it's going to catch on, and they're going to go, you know, this is good for our culture, that we can kind of maybe redeem ourselves a little bit. And in the long run, help protect these things around the country.
I actually never thought of that. What a great idea, because that really is the way to go. You're never going to get it from the white man, from the white, you know, system, and for whatever reason. And then it also gives the natives a chance to, you know, show more respect for the land. And we both live in one of the worst places for people are just destroying this environment.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just a nightmare what they're doing to this place. So it's nice to see that you guys are in the conservancy aspect of it. But I have to ask you this. Now, you're talking about you want to protect them. Are you going to protect them from people looking for Sasquatch also?
Well, no.
Because you're going to open up a whole can of worms when
and that's what we have to flesh out. But I don't have a problem. We have wildlife viewing areas everywhere, and there's protected species in there. You know, there's, you know, the line. You're right. The line's got to be drawn somewhere. But the main focus is to allow them to live their lives as natural as they can without harassment and certainly without threat of being injured or killed. So it's just a matter of respect for the creatures. I think we could meet in the middle somewhere, and you know, perhaps tribe would be willing with certain groups to say, you know, scientists, for instance, give them permits to go out and do benign passive observation, get some data that we need to help protect these things.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Because when you start going down that road, then you do start talking about, well, you have to have a permit to go out and look, and you have to investigate. That means you have to have education. That means the government's involved, and almost to a T, I think the culture for Bigfoot tends to be, well, we don't want them. We don't really want them involved. We just want them to say that they exist.
Well, there's several organizations out there like us, and let's not forget universities, and that we're trying to get taken seriously, and we're bringing scientists on board. Project Zulu, for instance, is one where we are literally working with zoologists, established primatologists, biologists.
Can I stop you for
Sure.
a second? Yeah, that's Project Zoo Book, and just look, it's projectzoobook.com.
Correct.
So check that out. It's amazing.
Now, as it stands now, we've granted anonymity to these scientists because obviously they're concerned about their professional careers, but it's good to know that they're on board. That even though they may be kind of closet researchers, they're interested in talking to us as much as we are talking to them. They've got the insight as to primate behaviors and family structures and communication and stuff like this, and we can apply that to what we're looking for, or at least try to. And at the same token, they're interested in what do we know about it, because they're kind of sitting on the sidelines while we're doing their field work.
Yeah.
You know, so we've opened up some channels of communication. I think we've got more than a half a dozen scientists on board right now, and it's really exciting to see what's going on in that field. Yeah. Another project I should bring up is SHARE, and this is another one that I helped initiate. SHARE is a body that is, we realize that we can't, if we're going to get these things recognized, we can't ask the scientific community to lower their standards to our amateur standards. What we need to do, working with them, is develop SOPs, how to write a professional scientific paper, how to get it published, what criteria. Take the name Bigfoot out and put in Seagull. You should be able to plug and play any species in there and make it read the same. Because it says Bigfoot should not change a thing. But if working with these other scientists, we've developed over 36 SOPs in terms of
Can I have a stop you for a second?
Sure,
We're talking about military man here. This means standard operating procedure.
My bad. Okay. Can't take the soldier out of the right? But anyway, so working and trying to collaborate with professional scientists, we think we don't necessarily have to bring the government in until such time as we've got met the standards that they're going to have a hard time denying. Correct.
Well, Todd, that's amazing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the stuff that you guys are doing, and looking forward to bringing you on a real podcast.
I would enjoy that.
All right, well, Todd Neiss for the, let me see if I can do it, American Primate Conservancy.
You got it.
All right, well, thanks for joining us on Encountered USA. And Todd, when you're out in the woods, always watch your back.
Watch your six.
All right, I was going to say that, but I didn't think anybody would get it. Well, thanks a lot, Todd.